Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video, we will see how to create serverless logic with Azure Functions. So let's say that imagine you work for a company that has invested in IoT technology to monitor its product in the field. You oversee the processing of temperature sensor data from the drive gears of the escalators. You monitor the temperature data and add a data flag to indicate when the gears are too hot. Right, so you are receiving sensor data from several locations and from different escalator models. The data arrives in different formats, including batch file uploads, scheduled database pulls, messages on a queue, and incoming data from an event hub. You want to develop a reusable service that can process your temperature data from all these sources. When designing a service such as this, with traditional enterprise architecture strategies, you would need to consider server infrastructure and maintenance upfront. So you would have necessary hardware, plan to install it, coordinate it with IT to manage it, and so on. An alternative to all that work is serverless computing. With serverless computing, the cloud provider manages the provisioning and maintenance of the infrastructure, letting us focus on completely on building the app logic. Right, so it all depends, and you have to decide if serverless computing is right for your business needs or not. So, what exactly is a serverless compute? Serverless compute can be thought of as a function as a service or a microservice that is hosted on a cloud platform. Your business logic runs as functions and you don't have to manually provision or scale infrastructure. The cloud provider manages infrastructure. Your app is automatically scaled out or down depending on load. Azure has several ways to build this sort of architecture. The two most common approaches are Azure Logic Apps and Azure Functions. So what are Azure Functions? Azure Function is a serverless application platform. It allows developers to host business logic that can be executed without provisioning infrastructure. Functions provides intrinsic scalability and you are charged only for the resources used. You can write your function code in the language of your choice, including C Sharp, F Sharp, JavaScript, Python, and PowerShell core. So let me just quickly log on to the portal and take it from there. Okay, I've logged on to my sandbox environment and I'm going to create a function app. Now, so functions are hosted in an execution context called a function app. You define function apps to logically group and structure your functions and a compute resource in Azure. And in this example, we would create a function app to host the escalator drive gear temperature service. We'll have to choose a service plan. We'll have to get the storage account requirements. So it depends upon the consumption service plan, which is the first service plan. This is the plan that we choose when using the Azure Serverless Application Platform. The consumption service plan provides automatic scaling and builds the function when it is running. The consumption plan comes with a configurable timeout period, which is by default is 5 minutes, but may be configured to have a timeout as long as 10 minutes. The second is Azure App Service Plan. This plan allows you to avoid timeout periods by having your function run continuously on a VM that we define. And if we configure it on a VM, we are responsible for managing the app resources the functions runs on. So this is technically not a serverless plan. So if you want to go with serverless plan, we would have to go for consumption service plan. I'm going to click on create a resource and I will choose function app here. I will click on create function app. It is my resource group that is available to me under this sandbox environment. The function app name I'll choose as escalator. Okay, I'll publish it through code. Runtime stack, I'm gonna go with, sorry, not .NET, Node.js. Version would be default. Region, you can choose whatever location. is nearest to you, or you whatever location you want to choose. I can choose Central India as well, right? So I'll choose East US. And if you want to see the hosting, this is what comes with default. If you would check the monitoring, I don't want to enable Microsoft Insights, create. It will validate it, and I will hit create. Let me pause this recording and come back. My deployment is done. I'm going to click on go to resource. You see the function app here. Now I can run the code on demand with Azure Functions. So there are we'll look how to build, configure, and execute a function. So this is the function app, simple function app. You see that there are no functions that I've defined. There are app keys, app files, proxies, right? Configuration, authentication, networking, custom domains, advanced tools, like some of the settings you have seen in the web app as well. All right. So in Functions app, we have triggers. Functions are event driven, which means they run in response to an event. The type of event that starts the function is called a trigger. You must configure a function with exactly one trigger. Azure supports triggers for the following services. You have a blob storage trigger, you have Azure Cosmos DB trigger, Event Rig, HTTP, Microsoft Graph Events, Queue Storage, Service Bus, and Timer. Then you have bindings as well. Bindings are declarative way to connect data and services to the function. Bindings know how to talk to different services, which means you don't have to write code in your function to connect to data source and manage connections. The platform takes care of that complexity for us as part of the binding code. Each binding has a direction. Our code reads data from input bindings and writes data to output bindings. Okay. And then you can define a simple binding through a JSON file, and you can add templates to the function app. So if you see this, this is a function, and events add function, and you can use these. I'll make a video on this explaining these things. How can I, when you create a function from a template, how can you navigate to the functions and the files? All right. Then you can enable monitoring and application insights. Then you can have the streaming logs. Okay, so this is how you create an Azure function, and this is how why we use an Azure function. I tried to explain you the Azure function concept. So in the next video, we will see how to add logic to the function app. Okay, so we in this series wherein we are creating serverless applications in Azure. This was the first video wherein we created a function app, and in the next video we will add a logic to our function app. I hope this was informative for all of you guys. If you have any queries, please mention them in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Have a good day.